Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to another in our series of double shot interviews where we bring in a minister or a CEO or someone we think's interesting to talk about the economy, the housing market, tax policy, whatever it is. And today we have here Olly Newland, a property investor and an analyst of the market and consultant, to talk about property prices, where property is going, his views on property, because, as we've discovered, Olly, your views create a lot of debate on our site, and we really appreciate the commentary pieces you've had, which have caused a lot of debate. Olly, welcome to interest.co.nz.
Thank you very much.
Tell us about commercial property and what your involvement in commercial property is and where you think commercial property is going.
Well, I've been involved in commercial property since the 1960s, and to me it's a very exciting field of the property market because it's like playing a three-layered game of chess, and you're dealing with some very rubbery people, and you're dealing with a better class of enemy. And to me, it's more exciting than residential because it's hidden. It's not political. You never hear about a chemist or a fish and chip shop being thrown in the street. So you can do that with impunity if necessary, and you can get some very good returns. And it runs on different rails from residential property. You can increase the value or decrease the value, as the case may be, by simply doing things to the property or the leases which can enhance the value overnight without relying on inflation. And that's why I like it.
So what type of commercial property do you like?
Well, everybody has different likes. I prefer retail, that's shops, because I've found that retailers are always just within a hair's breadth of a nervous breakdown. And that means that as landlord you can go back every few months or whatever and start renegotiating the lease. So the lease is virtually worthless as it stands, and you can renegotiate it to your advantage and to the tenant's advantage in many cases, again and again, as compared to, say, a factory or some other space like that where the tenant is there forever and ever and nothing much happens. But everybody has different tastes and likes. But that's what I like, and I like taking ugly ducklings, if you like, properties which are run down and the tenancies are a mess and the owner's given up, and turning these ugly ducklings into something better and a big improvement on them before, and of course they increase in value at the same time.
Must be tough though at the moment. Retailing's doing it tough, and I see a lot of shops that are empty in some shopping malls.
Oh, that to me is an opportunity, because that means I can buy that block of shops more cheaply than it might have been yesterday. And there are ways and means of getting tenants. Funny enough, unemployment, which is a problem, creates tenants. And I find every time that there's a hiccup in the economy and unemployment goes up, there's more inquiries for retailers and retail spaces, because people who are out of work think they'll set up a business, and most of them go broke. That's fine, I get some rent in the meantime, and I wish them best of luck, and some of them do very well. So it's a funny way the market works.
Now, I understand that over the years you've gone into commercial property and out of commercial property. Where are we in the cycle now, do you think?
I think like the residential market, it's relatively flat. While interest rates remain low, historically low at the moment, commercial property does produce a higher return, if you've got it reasonably balanced, of anywhere between 6.5% and 11%, depending on what you buy. And that's a better return than you can get in the bank. And then you have certain tax advantages, some of which have been removed and some have not. But you have to have the right mentality to be able to look after a commercial property. It can be heart-stopping.
What sort of problems do you have day to day? What sort of things do you watch out for?
Dealing with tenants' problems, many of them genuinely can't pay the rent, so you've got to sort out a problem there and help them. Obviously, you don't want an empty tenancy, so you sometimes have to park the rent to one side or give them assistance, and just like a banker would do, and let them pay it off and get back on their feet, or sell the business to somebody else, as the case may be. I'm not the sort that goes and locks people out overnight, unless they take me on. In that case, it's different. That's one of the main problems. And of course, its repairs and maintenance can be very severe on a commercial building. A house is basically made of plastic. You can chop and change it and fix it relatively easy, leaky homes aside. But commercial properties are steel and concrete and have elevators and air conditioning and escalators and all sorts of complicated things like that. And that can be very, very expensive when the time comes to repair it. Shopping malls are an example. They have to be renovated every few years, and that's enormously expensive. I've done that once and never again.
So how do you borrow money to buy into these properties, or don't you borrow money?
I have to kill you if I tell you. I try to avoid banks and go to non-bank lenders. That's as much as I tell you, because the banks are too trigger happy. As a general rule, it's best to borrow money from somebody who's in a weaker position as you are, so that if there's any problems, you can discuss it rationally. Well, I find that bankers just are soulless in these matters. But there's plenty of money out there from non-bank sources.
I understand that there's quite a few law firms, solicitors, who are arranging syndicates for commercial properties at the moment. It seems to be a bit of a boom area. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, syndicates, it doesn't matter how you do it. A syndicate is a giant partnership. It doesn't matter what name you give it, whether it's syndicate, partnership, or whatever. It's a gathering together of people for a common purpose. And the common purpose in the case of syndicates is to buy a certain property that produces an income, a better income than you might get in the bank. And they're very popular overseas, and they're popular here too. It's just finding the right properties that's the problem. There's plenty of property for sale, commercial property for sale. There are not very many good ones, and if you've got a very good one, why would you sell it into a syndicate? But the ones I've seen, some are very good and some are so-so. The main problem with syndicates is that once you've bought into it, how to get out of it. That's the main problem. If you don't care, or you haven't invested that much, then it could be an excellent way of parking some money at a better rate. But you have to carefully inspect the building itself and the strength of the tenant and the length of the lease. Because if it goes empty, you're in the same boat as a private investor. You get no return.
What do you think of the government's changes on tax around depreciation for property owners?
I think it's summed up in one word: dumb. Because the depreciation was only a temporary thing that an investor got. That had to be paid back when you sold the property. And the depreciation made the difference for many people between owning the place or not. And what happens now is that investors and landlords who've got property they can't claim the depreciation on will actually have a cash money shortage. And they're going to turn around and look around to find a replacement of that cash. It's not a paper thing, it's a real money thing. So they'll either push rents up, which is exactly what's slowly happening now, or they'll defer maintenance. Both. And either way, we're going to have rents going up steadily on one side, or we're going to have unemployment created by less maintenance work being done, because a lot of people out there work for property, doing them up, rebuilding them, or carpeting, or electricians, or anything like that. So I think that was the wrong end of the stick to poke at the property market.
Won't it just create a one-off reduction in property values?
I don't think so. People, Kiwis and around the world, are very hesitant about reducing the price on a property unless they have to. Now remember, 95% people out there, whether it's commercial or residential, don't have to sell. They would love to sell, but they don't have to sell. When push comes to shove, they don't have to sell. It's only those who are panicking and up against it, the death, divorce and the bank pressure, that have to sell where the bargains are. Most other people say, well, if we can't sell, we'll stay where we are, we'll renovate the place, that's it, too bad.
What about rents? You say that rents are likely to increase. Surely rents are linked to incomes rather than the landlord's desire to increase the rent.
Well, that's partly true, of course. There's a limit to how much you can do. That's why I advise people who come and see me as a consultant not to buy houses in the cheap working class areas. Nothing wrong with the people there, it's fine. It's just that there's a limit, there's a cap, if you like, on working class areas where people just simply can't pay more rent. So my advice to people is to buy properties in areas where there's more discretionary spending. So another $20 or $30 or $50 a week just means a latte or two, a bottle of wine difference to them. And people do find that is a better investment in the long run.
Some people have said that the residential property market is having a tough time at the moment. What's your view on where it goes?
The market is tough for some, as we mentioned before, but it's not as tough as some think. The headlines about being made by the development companies and so forth that are falling over, by people who got carried away by the boom and bought stuff that had no return at all, or bought sections by weed-infested lakes and out the wop-wop somewhere. Those people are getting rolled over, no question about that. But most of the time the market is flat. No matter how you use the numbers that are coming out, the market is flat. Sometimes up, sometimes down, but statistics are not a straight line, they're jagged. And a lot depends on the weather or which football teams are playing what and whatever. And New Zealand, after all, is only Fiji on steroids. Let's not get carried away here. So the market will move up and down. Every month you can prove the market is falling or rising. But if you look at the overall trend, it's flattish.
You've been around for a long time, through the 60s, 70s and 80s.
50s,
60s, there we go.
Yeah.
There was a period in the 70s and 80s when house prices were flat in nominal terms, but we had inflation, and so real house prices actually fell.
You can argue that, yes.
Is that what we could be facing?
This is what I think. My best guess is now that prices will stay relatively flat, inflation will creep up, and so analysts like you can prove that prices have gone down. Okay? Well, I'll say that prices have stayed flat, but somewhere down the line, a few years from now, don't ask me to guess when, prices will roar up again and make up for the flat period. But it may be 5 years, who knows, 10 years. But that doesn't mean that you can't make money in this market.
What about this argument that we've imported $100 billion worth of foreign debt? That's pumped up the value of property in New Zealand. After the global financial crisis, we're not going to have that easy foreign debt anymore, and prices will subside because of that.
Well, that's the argument's been used for generations, frankly, that somehow the money's turned up from somewhere and has pumped up prices. But the statistics show, as far back as I can go, that in the long run, remember, property investment is a long game. We cannot look at it month to month or week to week. It's not like the share market. Press a button, bang, you bought shares or sold them. The property market is a long game. You've got to think in 3 or 5 year bites. And this might be true for the moment that too much money has been pumped into the economy and prices have gone up. But in the long run, 3, 4, 5 years out from now, it'll even itself out and prices will rise again. Only looking back historically, look back 50 years, 100 years, or 200 years, prices up. The first property I bought, the first house I bought was £3,000. That was the going rate. That's $6,000. I was buying them in Mount Eden and other parts of central Auckland. Those same properties are now $700, $800, $1 million. And that took 40 odd years to get there. Okay, I mean, you've got to think like that. You've got to think in this long term. If you're a speculator, buy, sell, then you could get burnt.
Olly Newland, thank you very much. That was another double shot interview here on interest.co.nz. I'm Bernard Hickey.